this conversation today. So,
Hello.
hey.
Very.
Hi. Look how beautiful you look. Well, as always, but you're looking so beautiful. You're shining and glowing. I love it.
The ring light.
Hey, amen. Amen. Listen, I just want to say thank you so much for doing this today. I just really wanted to just keep connecting with people that inspire me and that I really look up to. And you're one of those people on my list. So when you said yes, I was very, very happy. And I just wanted to do a quick check-in with you before we start. Like, how are you doing with everything? How are you holding up in this moment? There's so much going on in the world. So I wanted to check in with you about that.
I am a very blessed person, and I try to stay in gratitude. I'm empathically in a lot of pain at what I see happening in my world. None of it surprises me. I do believe that it is part of the process of change and of growth, and it's going to be painful. It's going to be bloody, but a new world order is birthing.
Yes, I believe that. I have moments where it's very hard because this is something's happening in a way that I haven't seen before. And so for me, it only resonates to me that that means something is changing. And it's a very hard process, but I just want to be here to see what's on the other side of it. I want to witness it.
I would like
Yeah,
to.
yeah, I want to witness it. So good. I'm glad we had that check in. And so the next thing I want to ask you is, well, I want to say this first. That one of the reasons why I admire you so much is because you wear many hats, right? You produce, you direct, you write, you produced and directed your own show, your movie. You put yourself in that. And so, where did your love of the arts and how did that become your life and your path for you?
It's a strange sort of thing. I started off life intending to be a writer or a lawyer.
Mm-hmm. Oh wow. Okay. Yeah.
I used to just create. It wasn't like I thought of it as something I was going to do. I just made songs and I painted and I wrote books and I just did all those things. And I remember that was kind of my joy. And my mother used to say she couldn't really punish me by telling me I couldn't go outside because I had so much more fun by myself in a room.
Gotcha.
And she was a little, she actually was mentally ill, and so there actually came a point where she just took all my toys away from me, and I was just in the room with the Encyclopedia Britannica. So I just read through the Encyclopedia Britannica, and then my imagination took me to places in the world and made me desire to do things. But I think that just this desire to express is the most. I just always had that, and I thought I would be a writer. That was my first love, and I wrote my first novel starting in first grade, and um, by the time I got to fourth grade, I was like handing out. It was like soap opera. Here's okay, well, you gonna get murdered in that. Well, what's happening to me? Well, you get raped. So I'm handing out things, and everybody's waiting for the next episode of what's gonna happen to me. And my fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Ford, she got a wind of it, and she gathered up all of the pieces, and that was there was no word process. It was hunt and peck, a typed document. There was only one, and she stood up in front of the class and ripped it to shreds and threw it in one of those big gray garbage cans. And I didn't have anybody I could tell or anybody that was going to stand up for me. And I just remember that the way I took it was I just went home and I destroyed all of my art. And that was the end of that for me.
Wow. And so how did it, and so for you, with that being in at that time, where did that pick back up for you?
After that, I just was really shy. And I didn't, really want to do anything. It was a weird thing in that time. Like, I didn't talk much and I was shy. And then that got to be where the point that people thought, oh, I must be stuck up or I was conceited. And so then they wanted to beat you up because you must think you're better than me. And so then I got really good at doing the dozens. And then I got so good at doing the dozens that people were like, well, who the fuck do you think you are? And how dare you say that to me? And so it was like I couldn't win for losing.
Yeah.
And I remember when I saw some of the kids do shows at my school, and I was really enamored of it. And but when I got in my first show at seventh grade, it was The Miracle Worker. I got to play Annie.
Oh, okay.
And the teacher Annie sings the Mockingbird song, and I was not willing to sing. I wasn't going to sing publicly, so I just hummed it. And the next year, I was willing to sing, and I did Fiddler on the Roof. I played Golda and Huddle, and but I never lived up to what I thought it should be. Like, it was never up to my standards. So I was doing this thing, but not ever really feeling like I was particularly good or good enough or anything at it. And my mother had struggled to work so much in her life that when I started working professionally, which was about 13, that if someone offered me a job, I just took it because a job was a gift. My mother struggled for 15 years to get a job. So I just kept getting offered jobs. 16, I worked at the Goodman Theater. Then I went to the Kennedy Center in Washington. When I went to college at Carnegie Mellon, I got a Broadway show over Christmas break, Merrily We Roll Along, and I just kept getting work. And so I kept doing it, and I actually wasn't enjoying it at all.
Oh. Can you pinpoint why that was happening?
Not enjoying it. There was just nothing about it that was fun. I didn't like it. Okay. I didn't think I was that good. I remember at a certain point I went back to school and studied with William Esper because I just didn't feel like I was really that good. And so I went back and studied with William Esper. At that point, I was pregnant with my first child. And Bill, and I had already done a soap opera. And Bill was like, don't have any more children, because if you do, you will never be able to compete with the rest of the actresses whose careers are going to keep progressing while you are raising your child. And
that sounds like Bill.
I got 4 kids.
Yeah.
Because the fulfillment that I got from that was so much more than the fulfillment I got from any of the work that I did.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you for sharing that, because it's like how you know people, but you don't really know their story. And I've known you for a long time, so these are questions like I've wanted to ask, because I was like, I don't know. And I knew about your book, before I met you. You were on the scene for me with All My Children and everything before I met you. So to actually meet you and go, you know what, I know her from what I've seen and from what I've read, but to actually ask you to have the conversation makes me, feel just very blessed, because you've been in my life before you've been in my life, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But with all that you said about theater and you just starting working at 16 and where it led you to 13. This day, 13, yes, 13. I want to ask you about what's happening right now, with your point of view about what's happening right now with what's going on in the theater world with we see white American theater and all of this. Because the reason why I ask you this is because I have known you to be the type of woman who will stand up for yourself regardless of what's going on. And I remember seeing an interview with you at the new drama school, I think it was, and you talked about how you were in a show, you stood up for yourself, and that show never really got done because of your politics, right? And the crew and the cast supported you, but a lot of actresses don't do that. So talk to me about why it's important for you to make sure that your voice is heard and that you stand up for yourself the way that you do.
Well, I think that it's definitely an evolution of what I want for humanity. And actors have sort of historically been treated like the lowest of the low. But that's an identity that's given to them from somebody outside of them. And so it begins for me with not allowing someone outside of me to define my art. For whatever reason, my identity as a human being, I felt less valued as a human being, but I've not always, but I've had a much stronger sense of the value of my art. It's because I think for me, when I'm creating, I am very aware that I am a vessel, that it is something that is coming through me. And so the sense that I have inside of me of the power and the beauty of that is just a clarity. So, as I said, I have that about my work in more of the sense than I have about myself as a human being. And so there's no question that you're going to devalue this. Like, I know that this is a divine thing. So, no, you don't get to tell me what that is. And as I said, it's a clarity. So I think that that's a hard thing for actors to think that nobody gets to define you. And I just have always been clear. They're paying to come see you. If you don't show up at the theater, there is no show. They're not paying to see a set or some lights or some props or to even hear someone read a play. They're paying to see actors embody it. So I have just known we are the only thing that matters. And for me, I think there's that reverse psychology thing. I think it exists in racism as well, where if something is really so valuable that it is irreplaceable and nothing can be done without it, well, you can't let it know that it has all that power because then you're beholden to it, you're dependent upon it. So the best you can do is diminish it so that it always feels like that it needs you. And I think they write about it with the dating things, the game, where the men go and they poke at women's insecurities to keep them on the hook. I've been able to see that as an artist, that we as actors in the theater, we are the theater. There is no theater without us. I've never understood why we pay to go to these award shows. They don't have an award show.
That's true. I know I was mad when they told me how much I was like, I gotta pay to come to walk down this red carpet.
Exactly.
That is so real, because I remember having that moment, because I didn't know it until that happened, until I had this experience. I was like, oh, that's how it works. So yeah, that's real. That I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just have always had that sense. So it's like I'm not letting you define me. Like people were like, well, you're just an actress. You're just supposed to show up and do your job. No, you don't get to tell me what I'm supposed to do. I'm not a paper doll.
Yeah.
I'm not a paper doll. If you need a paper doll, there's some paper dolls out there. But if you brought me
but that's not you.
Don't get a paper doll.
Okay, amen. So with that said, how are you feeling with? I feel like theater's catching up to what you've been doing in your career. You see a lot of these demands and actions from actors of color, specifically Black actors, that are asking for, this is what we want, this is what we need in the theater, and you've been one of those rare actors who've said things in the room, in the moment. What's your point of view about what's happening right now with that?
Well, I had this lovely opportunity to be on the Doris Davenport show in Chicago this past week with Ernest Perry and Stephen McKinley Henderson and a bunch of other multi-generational artists. And we were talking about this very thing, because they were like, what do the white theaters owe us? And this wonderful woman, I forget what Felicia's last name was, but she was like, my mama told me, you don't get to do what you want in my house. If you want to do what you want, you need to go to your house. And so that's sort of my feeling about it. Like, you don't get to tell these white people how to run their house. Okay. Now, you can tell them that if they want you in their house, they got to do it this way. But I didn't hear that.
Gotcha.
I didn't hear anybody saying, you did this wrong, and if you want me to come back to your room, this is how it's going to be. And then they get to decide. I just heard, well, you better do this, and you better do this, and you better do this. Like, it's their house. They can do whatever they want to do. In fact, they don't even have to have public theater anymore. They can just pay some people to come to their estates. They have theaters in their backyards and their boat houses, and they can just have private theater for the rest of their lives, because that's the way it used to be when it was royalty, and the kings, queens had the court, and you were lucky if you got to. So there was just a kind of for me, like, do you get that if you're not telling them you want me, other than that, you have no power. Nobody was saying, I'm not coming in here if you so-and-so don't. Then it's like, well, just going around telling people how to run their house, that's meaningless to me.
Yes, because for you, and what I hear you say for you is like, it's about us finding our power and owning that power and keeping that power instead of giving it away.
Yeah, because they don't have power over us.
Yeah.
I'm irreplaceable, but you won't have me.
So it's time for us to go out and find ways to get what we want, or build it ourselves.
We can build it ourselves, or we can say, I know that I bring a value into the room. So if you are interested in what I bring into the room, this is what I require in the room. I've done that. Like, my contracts say I'm sitting in on marketing meetings.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I learned something new today. Okay. All right. That's amazing.
My contract. Yeah. I want to know who you're marketing to, who you're hiring. I want to say in that.
That's very powerful. But that's why I asked you that question, because you've been doing it for as long as I've known you, even before I met you. Like I've heard the stories and I've read, and I just and even in your interviews, the way you talk about the way you stand up for yourself, I just want more. I'm starting to see. It seems like a lot of artists are trying to do that, but it's just I wanted to ask you about the how, which you gave, which I find that we have to not forget is that we have when we're asking for certain things, we have to make sure that we're asking with power in mind and not giving that away. And that's what I hear you saying, and I appreciate that.
You have to know what your boundaries. You have to know that you are risking that they might remove you from the room.
Yeah, yeah.
Is it worth it?
And be okay with that, right?
And be okay with that. If it's a line that you're like, well, I can't. Okay, you might not get to be in the room.
No, I really like that. Oh, this is so good. This is all good nuggets and stuff. The next thing I wanted to ask you about is your podcast, right? You can't say that.
Yeah.
The one thing I like about it is, and the reason why I love it, it's different from other podcasts, is because you can listen to podcasts. Sometimes you hear the same type of subject regurgitated in different ways. But you bring up topics that a lot of people are not talking about. Like you have an episode where you have a policeman talking about Blue Lives Matter and Black Lives Matter, and that you don't hear that on podcasts, especially from artists in our world, especially because you see a lot of artists, especially with Black Lives Matter, specifically Black artists, Black Lives Matter, and talking about defund the police, these different topics, but amongst ourselves. But you literally have this podcast where you bring up things about having. There was one episode with a playwright who has a physical condition and what that means and how being in the arts and dealing with his immune system and a debilitating condition, I guess, is how you said it. And talk to me about why those specific topics, because they're so different and so great and points of views you don't see coming. And, when you hear, oh, Tony Award winner Tonya Pinkins has this podcast, you go in thinking it's going to be this, artistic in some way, which it is, but you bring up so many aspects of life and humanity. I want you to talk about why you chose that.
I have always just been a really curious person. And I am at my happiest when I'm in a foreign country, sitting at a table with a bunch of people who live differently than me and just listening to them talk about their world. There's just nothing that makes me happier than learning and absorbing how somebody else's experience of this is different than mine, because I'm just really aware that my experience is only my experience. So I'm always interested, like, what's your experience? What are you seeing? What color does that look like to you? That's just always been my way. And I think because I always say that I don't know how to cook because I'm a really good eater. And when eating a meal, I'm appreciative that they want to cook for me again and again and again. And I feel like I'm that way as a listener.
Yeah.
That I am genuinely interested and curious. And so people end up often telling me stories that they've never spoken before, because I think they feel heard. And so the variety of people that are in my life, because of that curiosity, is just vast. And one of the things I've experienced as a person living in New York is how much New Yorkers are in a bubble. And it was so clear to me that the current president was going to win. And I was treated with such contempt and disdain, and I thought, it's because you're not talking to people who aren't in your world. You're not talking to them. You don't actually know what the world is other than your world. Yeah. And so I felt, it was an opportunity for me to, in almost in the Anna Devere Smith way, where she speaks other people's words so that you can hear them, because you can't. Me inviting someone in the room you might not ever have a conversation with, because I'm having the conversation with them, you would come in and listen to something that, other than that, you wouldn't be interested. And I wanted to create a way to open people's worlds up to things that might not be of interest to them, and to give them this sort of fly on the wall experience of an intimate conversation. That was what I got to experience as a kid growing up. You just be sitting there, you just be listening to grown folks talk. That's what I wanted to do. Just go listen. You don't feel pressure to have to add anything or say anything, but you just get to hear, and then you can decide for yourself what you think about it. And also that I bring on people that I don't agree with, so that you can also see a modeling of people can disagree and still be respectful and not have to hurt each other or kill each other because they don't see things the same way. So for me, it's about planting a seed and modeling people's expanding their minds and their consciousnesses about what is possible in the world.
And so with that episode, the Blue Lives Matter and the Black Lives Matter episode, which is the conversation today, and that's why I'm bringing it up, was that you picking the topic, or were you talking to this person and saying, oh, this is what I want to talk about, come on? How do you pick the topics specifically? Is it something that you and your guests come up together, or you go, you know what, I want to talk about Blue Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, you're a police officer, come have this conversation with me?
I don't pick any topics for my podcast. It's in the moment, we're figuring
it out.
Okay. John is someone, whenever something happens with the police, I'm like, what'd you think of that? He's so blue. He's blue through and through. And I'm like, well, John, let me bring you on my podcast. Let's do this. I'm like, John is like, we need to do another one. Because we don't ever agree.
Yeah.
We don't ever agree. And it was like, well, let's just have a conversation. And, he was trying to get his point, and I wasn't having it.
Yeah.
But that was fine.
Yeah, that's what your podcast. For those who are watching and who will watch this later, you guys should definitely check out her podcast. You can't say that because, like I said, the topics are different from what you're used to hearing in podcasts, especially when artists and actors put together a podcast. They tend to talk about the business or what's happening in the business. And Tonya covers so many different points of views that it's really opened my eyes to really listen to what other people are thinking. And also outside of our community, because our community is so small and we tend to know each other and we know, but for you to go outside and branch and, talk to people that I've never heard or met before, I find that fascinating. So that's why I like listening to it. So I want to thank you for that. But I want to ask you, where did the title come from? Yeah, go ahead.
Like for me, we do plays about everything. We act every kind of role. So for me, I'm like, there's anybody I bring on, you might have a play about that. That's a character you might have. Here's an opportunity to experience this person in a very intimate way.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's very powerful what you're doing. And how did you come up with the title?
I was going to call it the Politically Incorrect Podcast, and I was sharing that with George C. Wilson. He's like, "You need to call it. You can't say that. The show where you say."
And so George C. Wilson helped you come up with the title, which I think
came up with the title. Okay.
I think that's great. And how did you get to the platform that you're on, the Broadway podcast platform? Is it something that you said, I have this idea, I want to go here, or did they come to you?
No, they came to me. Dory Bernstein, I was in her documentary Showbiz and the Road to Broadway, and we've stayed in touch. I have a great deal of respect and admiration for Dory Bernstein, and she approached me about it and really said I could do whatever I wanted to do.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm glad that happened because this is a time, especially when people need to be heard in voices. And so the fact that you're bringing in different points of views and not necessarily agreeing with all of them, it gives us an example of how to be able to have a conversation with somebody who's different from you, but not pop off and be at a 12, because, it's like, especially when you're passionate, I know myself, and I've evolved and gotten so much calmer over the years, but to be able to have those conversations and go, okay, I don't agree with you, and to be able to debate your point and say your point with facts and just say this is how I feel without it becoming a fight or an issue. And so I really think it's a learning tool for other artists who may have things that they want to say, but how they can engage with somebody who doesn't think like them without it becoming a massive fight, name calling kind of problem. Yeah, so I appreciate that. And so what I was saying earlier about you wearing many hats and being a writer, director, producer, author. Talk to me about the Red Pill, because you wrote it, you produced it, you directed, you starred in it. And so for an artist, me just thinking that, and me becoming a new producer as I produce theater with, as you know, with Ngozi or Chi-Chi or National Black Theater, I've worked with them producing. But to produce your own work, direct it, star in it, write it, I can't even imagine the the life it brings in me right now just asking you this question, because it would just scare me so much, because that is a lot of work. Like, there's one hat of that is a lot of work, but every aspect of the movie, talk to me about that.
As I said, I often feel that when I'm creating, I'm just a vessel. I'm an instrument for something to come into the world. Red Pill, I have a lot of feelings about the American politics. And from my experience prior to 216, I knew that there was no point in me trying to talk to people about it. But in reading Stephen King's essays, talked a lot about how, you know, the things that he thinks about nobody wants to hear, so he puts them in stories. That horror in particular is an amazing place to talk about political things. When I wrote Red Pill, I wrote it in August of last year, and we started shooting Halloween weekend of last year. It was in the can by the middle of November. So, I mean, you know, things to make a movie, but this was divinely guided. The cast I wrote it for Ruben Blades and Luba Mason, and they invited me to dinner. Never been to their house before. They invited me to dinner, and Ruben said, you know, you have to make your own things. And I was like, well, speaking of which,
you're like, here you go. Yes.
Ruben is an international recording artist. It just happened that the schedule for my movie fit between two concerts that he had in Colombia. Like, miraculous that our times fit right there. Harold Perrineau was going to do it, and it was like Harold and Ruben's schedule didn't line up. So I went with Ruben. Adeshila Abusakalumi took his place.
Yeah.
For me, I felt like I've been shadowing directing and television for about 3 or 4 years.
Oh, wow, nice, yeah.
And really felt like I could do it with my eyes closed. And it was very clear, because I knew the showrunners, I knew the execs, they were not going to give me that job.
Amen, that's real.
You know, after 4 years of this, and you know, every time you do that, it's time when you can't be doing another job. You know, it's a month of your life. You're sitting on a set 14 hours a day. You can't get in the way. You know, you are a shadow, and it's a great experience to learn the dynamic and to learn all the people and all the jobs. So I'm in heaven for the learning. But at the end of it, it was clear nobody was going to give me the job. And people kept offering me another opportunity to shadow. It's just like, I can't afford to take another month out of my life and not have income coming in when I didn't feel any closer to getting hired. And so, you know, I remember listening to an Ava DuVernay video saying, you know, she didn't go to school. So I said, I'm going to hire myself. And
nice. Oh, I like that. Say that again. You're going to hire who? Yourself? I love it.
And for me, it was like I was born to do it. It was the first time in my life where all of the things that I'm interested in and good at came to play. And it was like, oh my God, why did I wait so long? Because I was scared, because people tell you it's so hard. It is hard, but it's the kind of hard that I love. If it wasn't hard, everybody would do it. So it was the kind of hard work that I wanted to do. And, you know, prior to doing it, I always had this thing where, like, I wrote a book called Get Over Yourself, How to Drop the Drama and Claim the Life You Deserve. It's a self-help book. But I tried to write it in a way that was like, this is my experience. I'm not trying to be a teacher, because I've always feared leading people astray. I never wanted to lead people astray. So I've never wanted to be a leader. And there was one.
But you know you are, though, right?
There was a moment in the middle of my movie. Oh, but I've also always wanted a team. And I know everybody. You know, I know all of those talented people, and I've always been trying to, let's all of us do this thing together. And that never happened. And there was a moment in the middle of my movie where I realized the thing I most didn't want in my life and the thing I most wanted in my life were happening, and that they were intertwined. Like, here, I had a team. It was the team that came together to make the movie because they could do it for what I could pay, and they were available, and they wanted to be there, and I was the leader. And I had to trust that I wasn't going to lead them astray, because I didn't know what was going on. They would all leave because they were there because of an idea that I had. And so I had to trust that I was a leader, could be a leader, and could lead them to successfully completing this film. And fortunately, I had a mentor, Junie Smith, who would give me my pep talks every day. And I've loved every bit of this process. It's scary and terrifying, and I was crying today, like, how do I bring it home? But I can't wait to do it again.
So you just dropped the trailer, and so for people who, you guys make sure you see the trailer, the Red Pill by Tonya Pinkins. She wrote it, directed, produced it, she stars in it. The trailer's out now. But give people an insight of what it is about for you, that what you can say without giving it away, you know.
Well, you know, when I wrote it a year ago, it was the world that I was seeing. You know, most people people in my world weren't saying it. Clearly, the people who came to do the movie with me saw that world. They got it. But, you know, Stephen Hendel, you know the producer Stephen Hendel, he was, when I went to raise money, and he was like, you know, Tonya, that ending. And the other day he was on Twitter and he was, you know, ranting about what was going on in the world, and I tweeted back to him. I said, Stephen, remember when you thought my ending was questionable? And he was like, no, I was wrong. You're a visionary. So I wrote a movie about the moment we're living, but I wrote it a year ago. And this thing that was supposed to be a dystopian, quote, fantasy, because, you know, in a dystopian world, you can just talk about things because they're not real.
Yeah.
Every day they become more real.
Wow.
So it's almost getting to the point. I was talking to Laura Bell Bundy. We're going to be using a song from Laura Bell Bundy's in the show, and she was like, this is just like a documentary. You know, which is kind of what Jordan Peele said Get Out was. It's like every day the movie becomes more real. And I think it has that quality that Get Out has, where black people are going to be like, huh? I know some of that. I'm going to sit down and they're going to be like, And white women in particular, you know, as they're having a problem with Kieran, you know, it gets under their skin. It gets under their skin because it is definitely, they are the monster.
Wow. Okay. Oh. Okay. So you gonna get some people all Karen out. They're gonna be some Karen. They're gonna walk in your movie. They're gonna see your movie, and they're gonna throw some tantrums. But you know what? Those stories need to be told because listen, the Karens are every day. There's a video of a Karen, and I'm just like it's and it's the fear of them. You know, feeling like they're losing power. Equality to them is them losing power, and it's just and they always want to keep us in our place, right? And so, and we need to talk about it. So I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see it.
It is a horror story.
Okay.
You know, my vision for it was that we get it out. Before the pandemic happened, we were going to have screenings at the Museum of the Moving Image, and we were going to have screening in Indianapolis, because I was like, this is the movie for black people to go, oh shit, we better get moving before this happens, and for white people to go, no, that's not me.
Wow. Oh my gosh. And so, do you have a release date set for it? I know you dropped the trailer, but so you're just gonna see what happens one day at a time for you.
Yeah, I mean, I have to trust that everything that's happened with it has happened in its divine time, and so I'm like, okay, I'm the vessel. Come on through and do what you're gonna do.
Wow. Oh my gosh. So people who are watching, I know if you guys have a question for Tonya, you can ask, but I can't guarantee that she's going to answer it. You know, she's going to answer what the way she feels.
Okay.
But if you're watching and you want to ask a question, because I always have to have a disclaimer because because you answer what you want. You don't, if you don't want to answer something, please don't do it. I know you're not going to, you're your own woman. But I know I like to give people a little time to ask if they want to. But if not, we'll just go to our cherry pick. But is there anything you would like to ask me, or is there anything you want to say in addition to what we talked about today before we head out? Because I like to be in and out with these.
Is this a real world that we're in? I see your Emmy back there.
Yeah, the reason why I have this Emmy is because, I have it in the interviews is because I started doing these interviews and I didn't have the Emmy. And then Lisa, Jessie Peterson, she and a few other people texted me and were like, you know what, you should have your Emmy in the background with these interviews. And I was like, well, I don't know. I said, let me try it. And so then I started doing it and people were liking it. And people were asking me, what do you have the Emmy for? What's going on? But it was something that I didn't start out with. But then everybody was like, listen, you have that Emmy. Make that yes, yeah. See, and it was like just make it part of the show. And I was like, okay, great, fine. Because for me, it's like I want to do these IG lives as a way for people to connect and to get to know you more so than like for me. With my experience, it's like I see you on TV, All My Children, read your book, Carolina Change, just all the shows you've done. And so for me, to get to know you is, I feel like it's, I know I just feel honored because, like I said in the introduction, there's a lot of doors that have been opened because you came in and got that Tony and kept at it and kept opening doors. And so a lot of us coming up wouldn't be here. So that's why I just personally want to thank you for that. So Yeah, so I appreciate it. So, but I don't know. I don't see a question here. Is there a question going
Okay.
on? If not, oh, there's a question. As far as leading your crew, do you see it on your end?
I can't see it.
Yes. Okay. As far as leading your crew, what was the most difficult part of that struggle? What was the most difficult part with that struggle? Because not knowing if people would respect you enough to take direction.
I didn't have that issue at all. I didn't worry about anybody respecting me enough to take direction. We were moving very, very quite fast. We shot a movie that's going to be about 97 to 100 minutes in 10 days. I hired great actors. I know what it's like for me on a set when a director's trying to tell me to do this, do that, do that. I was like, these people are good. I wrote this for them. I would be like, you know what? Before you say this line, take a 10 count of whatever you're feeling, and then take a pause there and give me that, and like go. I didn't have time to rehearse it. I said we had a whole scene that was like 15 pages. I said we're gonna shoot this like it's a play. So let's just act it out. I'm gonna take it and set it up and get everybody's reactions. Um, I wanted to make a movie that was the way I see the world, and the way I see the world is not the way these movies are. Someone looked at my movie and were like, "Well, they're so this and they're so that," and I was like, that's how I see them.
Amen.
I know that you used to making movies about yourself where you're not like that, but that's how I see it. That's the movie I'm making.
Yeah.
I think the biggest challenge was when we were running out of time and we were running out of money. Like we had a set and we had a certain amount of time and we had to do it, and I would have to figure out how to accomplish something in the moment that we could not accomplish what was in the script. And it would be like I would have to just, and then I would be like, go here, do this, and my AD and my script would be like, and I'm like, I don't have time to explain it to you. Just do it this way, and we're going to get something that's going to solve what this moment was about. So I think that was probably the biggest challenge for them because I was having to problem solve because I was on a clock. I couldn't afford to go into overtime, and they don't have it on the page. Like that's not what we wrote. We can't shoot what we wrote. The location doesn't allow it. We don't have the time. I saw it. Can't tell you about the song. I saw it.
Wow, nice. That's spoken like a true director. Spoken like a true director. But before we go, I want to ask you about your cherry pick. At the end of each interview, I always say a cherry pick to pay it forward in the Black community or the Black arts, whatever you choose. Do you have one? What would it be for you today?
My cherry pick is Sherwood Delore of Always Pro Barbers. He is the fiercest barber. He puts the cuts in your hair. He did the cuts for my hair in my movie Red Pill, and he's in Brooklyn on Nostrand Avenue. Always Pro Barbers. You can find him on Booksy. His name is Sherwood Delore, and that is my cherry pick.
I love that. I love that. Nice. And one more question before we go. This person asked, with your directing, theater, TV, film, one you portray, prefer over one or the other, or?
No, I like to get the opportunity to do different things because you do something for a while and you get a little tired. You need a little change of pace. I like variety.
Okay. Nice. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for jumping on and doing this. I'm so glad. I learned so much today about you that I wanted to know. So these questions are genuinely, I was like, I just want to know about these things. I don't know about this, about these things about you. So thank you for taking the time and saying yes and sharing part of your life with me. Debbie McIntyre says she loves you.
Oh, thank you, Debbie. Hey,
so yeah, you're getting a lot of love on the line. Thank you so much. I feel the same way about you. And for guys, listen to her podcast. You can't say that. And look out for the Red Pill
2020.
Yes. And is there a website?
There's a website, www.redpillmovie2020.com. That's Red Pill Movie 2020 on IG, on Twitter, on Facebook. And my podcast is bpn.fm/YCST, where you can't say that.
Nice. Good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And it's good talking to you.
You too, sweetie.
I really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.